Welcome to the Pulse with Peter B. I'm your host, Peter Biancamano, and this is your one-stop shop for sports picks, politics and government chatter, and even some neighborhood restaurant reviews. Instead of going to 3 different channels, you can come here every week for the Pulse on everything you need to know. And we're in a little bit of a different environment, folks. As you can see, we're not in the studio with the brick wall behind us. We are live from Hoboken, New Jersey at 333 Washington Street at the beautiful CuBan restaurant and bar. And why does that sound familiar? Because we are joined, of course, by Mai Rana of MyGoodies.com.
Hi, guys.
And of course, she is our resident foodie every week on the Pulse. And she reviewed this restaurant a few weeks ago on the show, and why not come and try it out in person? So Mai, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm hungry. I'm ready to eat.
And she's ready to eat. So Mai, before we go in, because I know it's a little chilly out here, we
Yeah.
got our gloves on and our scarves and our hats. Tell me, what do you think of this location of the CuBan?
I think it's right in the middle of Hoboken. Great. You can access the path train. You can kind of walk if you're in the area. And it's in the middle of Washington Street, so everybody knows where it's at. It's right here.
That's right, and everybody knows how difficult it is to park in Hoboken, of course, but there are municipal garages right around the corner, and stop in because I'm sure the food is delicious. So you ready to go in and try some food?
Yeah.
Food has now arrived.
I know. I'm like taking it all in. The aroma from this food just smells amazing, and then from everybody else's dishes.
And you said, well, let's get
yeah.
into it first. And you said over and over again how hungry you are. So why don't we explain each dish here? Why don't we start with the one closest to you here?
All right, so this one right here is like their steam buns. Anytime I get food, I always take a photo of it, right? So I always post it on Instagram. I make my followers really, really hungry. And this is just like the perfect presentation when I'm eating somewhere. This is what I'm looking for, right? Not only is it like beautifully presented, but it tastes amazing as well. So this is obviously for sharing. You can order it as a starter. So it's a nice like steam bun. So this is like Asian inspired.
You grab, now I'm grabbing.
Yeah. It has like the chicken thigh that's breaded, deep fried with some lettuce, topped with a like little habanero chili. And then it has like some kind of like aioli or some like mayo that goes kind of with it. And then this little like bamboo toothpick kind of holding it together.
So now Maya, let me ask you.
Yeah.
This bun, because we spoke about these sticky buns before.
Yeah.
This is not your ordinary flour or corn tortilla, correct?
No.
This is actually, it feels almost similar to what's in the bread that we just had.
Yeah.
Almost like that cheesy texture, correct?
Yeah, so what this is supposed to be is like it's usually prepared steamed. So it's not anything that you actually bake in an oven. It's supposed to be like quite tacky, but nice and doughy to hold up all the flavor from this particular like either protein or like chicken or whatever it may be. But it tastes amazing.
Tastes amazing. So why don't we move on here, because as you can see, we have several other dishes. Mine next, this is camarones al hijo. Oh, see that?
So
I practiced my Spanish before coming in.
Like me, I would say this is like garlic shrimp. As you can see, it comes with like a nicely toasted bread, so you can soak that in the like the garlic butter sauce.
Oh my God, here she goes, folks. Here
And,
she goes.
It's not like your mini shrimps, right? This is like pretty decent size.
I'm picking, as you can see, Maya. I'm picking. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You got the herbs, you got the garlic, and you got like the butter kind of like resting underneath it.
Oh,
really, really good.
Would you agree that any type of shrimp, when you bite into it and the tail comes right off, that's absolutely the freshest shrimp that you can get?
I agree.
I mean, and look at that, folks. That came right off. I didn't even have to like use my teeth too hard. That was unbelievable. And the garlic, sometimes people, especially if you're on a date, correct? People might say, oh, you know, the garlic is going to stink up my breath. How about if, you know, I have the date's going so well that there might be a kiss at the end of the night and things like that. But I think the garlic is just perfect on there, correct?
Honestly, if you're bringing someone here, you're not concerned about when you're going to kiss and all that. You're really coming for the flavor of the food.
You're coming for the flavor of the food and the live music on Sunday. But I'm still like into that. I can't wait to come back on a Sunday now.
It is perfect when it is like warmer weather. They actually open up the doors and you can hear it from the street. So it kind of brings a crowd in, and it's really, really like.
So not only will the food bring the crowd in, but obviously the music can bring that in. Okay, and then what do we have here on our last dish?
So this is the ropa vieja.
Placed. Ooh, the
it comes
ropa
with
vieja.
like so you can see this little like skillet here. It has like the stew. Everything is kind of like just marinating in there. It's really just like shredded beef. So you top it over the rice.
Put it on top of the rice, you're saying. Look at that.
And then you kind of just like mix it in.
And then you kind of mix it in. Okay.
Make sure you put some beans in there as well.
And make sure we got some black beans on the side here. And Mai, I'm just curious. I mean, ropa vieja, it could be such a simple dish. It's
Right.
shredded beef, you know?
Right.
But obviously the sauce is what makes it, correct?
Absolutely. So if you can see, there's like some tomatoes, there's some
Sorry, I
peppers
don't
in
wanna
there. Everything is kind of like marinading in this like little like stew, or this like gravy is what they call it.
All right, I'm going to serve
Yeah,
you
of
now,
course.
Mai, because I was very rude before and I just had a shrimp, and
That's
you know,
okay.
my mother would get mad at me because my manners are certainly not that great. So we'll serve you. We'll have Mai try this, and folks, it's such a simple dish, and the dishes are quite small. Sometimes you go to a lot of these different places where they give you a lot of food and the flavor is not there, correct? I mean, and here, it seems like they know how to do it and they know how to do it well.
Agreed.
I mean,
or else
go ahead,
we
sorry.
wouldn't be here, yeah.
Exactly, or else we wouldn't be here, folks. And again, we spoke about this a few weeks on the show. We wanted to bring the pulse on the road to talk about the Cuban restaurant here, and the ropa vieja with the white rice. Even the white rice, I'm sure, is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, with the black beans, the camarones al ajillo, and then, of course, these sticky bun tacos. So the audience is waiting for you to try that ropa vieja, Maya, and I need to know your opinion. Here's the countdown, folks. Here it comes. Mai Rana of My Goodies, who's been talking every week on the Pulse of Peter B.
Ready?
Here we go. Sorry, I'll stop.
I need more beans.
Need more beans? Okay. Hey, look, we'll
Yeah.
give you some. We'll give you some more beans.
Thank you.
There you go.
Perfect, thank you.
You know, I mean, she obviously knows her food well when she's asking for more beans here. What do you think? 10 out of 10?
Perfectly seasoned. I think the beans complement it really well, and that white rice is not too salty.
And the white rice is not too salty. I mean, goodness, folks, everything from the bread that was filled with a little bit of cheese, to these tacos, to the shrimp, to the ropa vieja. Heck, if you don't eat something, don't worry. The Cuban has something else for you. I mean, there's great chicken dishes on the menu. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, if you're coming here for brunch, they have like their I guess they're more breakfast with eggs, and they'll have it with the rice, and they'll have like still like very Cuban like themed. But if you're coming here for something like that, they have it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, the crowd that's here today, that's gathered, and we thank the Cuban for letting us do this, I mean, are just so happy, and food makes people happy. And I know that makes you happy, right, Ma?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I
exactly.
need food.
Yeah, there you go.
I need
It's the energy of life,
Right.
correct? I mean, so folks, we're gonna keep digging in here because there's a lot of food to get to, but I hope that I didn't sound too bad chewing in the microphone, but the food was just so good that I couldn't. Mai, anything else you recommend here today?
I would probably go with like maybe the chorizo burgers that come in little to share like as well, just like this. But other than that, I mean, also the seafood paella. Like you said, you like the shrimp. Why not get a big bowl of
Why
it?
not
Make
get
it
the
an appetizer.
paella?
I mean, a
It's-
big entree.
Exactly. Again, the Cuban restaurant, folks, 333 Washington Street in Hoboken, New Jersey. And don't worry about the parking situation in Hoboken. I'm born and raised in this town. We know how to do it. There's municipal garages right around the corner, a few dollars. You know, it's totally worth it to come here. And there's public transportation. The path is 3 blocks away. The bus leaves you right on the corner. Get to the Cuban. I'm sure you guys would love it. We'll be back, folks. Welcome back to the Pulse of Peter B. I'm your host, Peter Biancamano, and this is your Picks with Peter B segment. And we're joined in the studio by none other than former BUTV play-by-play commentator and starting to become a resident sports insider here on the Pulse of Peter B, Mr. Sean Potor. Sean, what's going on today?
How you
buddy?
doing, Pete? I'm doing well.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you back. It
I'm
really
good to be
is.
here every week.
All right, I like that. So, you know, football season is over now,
Yep.
and spring training is here. And if we look at those New York Mets, the pitchers and the catchers already reported this past Thursday, Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
We have the infield position players coming in tomorrow, but
Yep.
the first full team workout will be on Tuesday, February 19th, or this upcoming Tuesday. And, you know, we spoke about the Mets a few weeks ago, the Metropolitans, as we like to call them, a few weeks ago. But we didn't really get into much detail. So why don't we get into a little bit more detail with these Mets? And why don't we start out with last year's NL Cy Young winner? Because, of course, he made headlines this week, Jacob deGrom. Of course, he said that he'll only negotiate a new contract up until opening day. And then there's even talk of him cutting his innings. I mean, when the season starts, if he doesn't have that new contract. Brody Van Wagenen used to be his agent.
Right.
What's going on? Are they on the same page?
It's a question where Jacob deGrom wants to be in a Met uniform. He's not going to stray away from that. He's going to continue to play for the New York Mets. But now it's a situation where Brody Van Wagenen is moving from agent to general manager, where he's having two different types of roles that he has to compete with now. So he obviously understands where Jacob deGrom's agent is coming from because he was in his shoes just a year ago for this situation. But really what his agent is trying to do is just gain leverage on the negotiation. Right. He's trying to say, you know what, maybe, you know, if you don't give us this deal by opening day, then we're going to start limiting some things. You know, that's going to come down to, you know, maybe some workload, maybe the innings. And then, you know, reporters start hearing that he's going to get limited. So now they're going to bring up all these questions. So it really wasn't his agents coming out and saying, we're going to limit his innings. They didn't physically say that themselves. It was just kind of saying, we want to be able to negotiate this on a deeper level. We're trying to gain you know, leverage on you. And then the reporters just took it a whole different aspect and, you know, asked the question, is this going to limit your innings? And then Jacob deGrom was just, you know, maybe I just have to, you know, keep continuing to talk with my agents and see where that's going to go.
So what do you think? Where do you think this is going to land? Are they going to give deGrom the big contract with the big money? He's 30 years old now, which, of course, by pitcher standpoint is not that old, obviously. Right. But certainly, I mean, he is getting, the prime of his career is moving very, very quickly.
Well, it's, if you want to bring in like Machado and Harper in the same situation, it's becoming money. Right. Because he's the reigning Cy Young Award winner, like you said, he wants money. He's going to be like, you know what, that's even more leverage now. You know, I was the best pitcher in the National League last year, so I deserve a contract with a lot of money. And then, of course, there's the years that come along with it. Say you give him 5 years, he's going to be pushing 35, 36 years old. And that's kind of going to be the tail end of his career at that point. But if he's not going to take, I don't know, $20 million a year, I mean, that's probably what they probably have put on the table, and he probably wants more. I mean, Luis Severino for the Yankees just signed a 4-year, $40 million deal.
That's right.
So if you think about,
we're going to talk about the Yankees next week, folks. But
yeah, and if he's the Yankees ace, then he's only getting $10 million a year in his contract extension. Well, I mean, is Jacob deGrom, how much more is he going to take? So it's the business, and that's kind of what the reality of it is.
Also, his season last year was phenomenal. It's probably one of the best seasons that a starting pitcher has ever had.
Yeah.
Can he repeat that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things that have added to this team.
I'm getting so excited. I'm falling off the chair.
There's a lot of additions now to the team that are going to help it. You know, starting pitching is probably one of them, where if he goes in and day out, every 5th day, 6th day, whatever his starts are going to be, and he gives you your quality 7-8 innings, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to get a win because you're going to get to the bullpen and you're going to get to Jerry's Familia and Edwin Diaz, and they're probably going to close out your innings if you could stay in the ball game. So it's kind of beneficial. Last year, he kind of, you know, only had 10 wins.
Right.
But that's kind of
the bat's fault around.
Exactly.
But look, we know that one player doesn't make the team. So why don't we talk about, you know, the rest of the Metropolitans here? And we spoke about the number of signings the Mets made in the infield a few weeks ago. You know, does Mickey Callaway, of course the manager of the Mets, have a plan for this crowded infield?
I mean, I sure hope so. If you go around the horn, we'll go from third to first. I mean, you look at third base, it's going to be Jed Lowry's spot. He's going to be the everyday starter, most likely there. Right behind him is going to be Todd Frazier, but we'll talk to him in a little bit. But so then you're going to go to shortstop. It's going to be Ahmed Rosario. He's locked that down. Really, nobody's going to come in and take that from him. Obviously, with the addition of Robinson Cano, he's going to be the everyday starter at second base, which limits Jeff McNeil. We'll get to that as well. But then you get to first base. That's going to probably be where Todd Frazier is going to be. But now the issue is Peter Alonso, the rising prospect in the Mets organization. He's had a lot of talk. He's probably going to be eventually playing first base, but I think it's a huge contract issue with him where if he plays X amount of time or innings or games down in AAA to begin the season, the Mets have more control over him if he then gets brought up later in the season. So you're probably going to see Todd Frazier at first base to begin this season, and then Peter Alonso probably towards the tail end of the season.
So you spoke about first base, but you also spoke about Jeff McNeil.
Yes.
And what they're talking about here in spring training is Jeff McNeil playing out in the outfield. Yeah. Can he be an everyday player out in that outfield?
He can, but we keep talking about depth. The outfield has just as much depth as the infield now. I mean,
it's amazing.
How is he going to battle with Michael Conforto, Brandon Nimmo, Cespedes when he becomes
Lagares, maybe?
Lagares is back. Keon Broxton is coming in.
That's right. I forgot about
It's all these people have been lined up to play the outfield, and they can play left, center, or right. I mean, sure, he's a talented athlete. He's a baseball player. Jeff McNeil probably can easily play the outfield. He's not going to be like a Dominic Smith was last year trying to play left field. That's going to be a whole different ball game for McNeil. But the depth is just out of control. So sure, you want to transition him into an outfielder, but he's just getting left hanging.
Right.
You know, he's just being kind of hung out there to dry. Like, you want him to play. I feel like Mickey Callaway and Brody want him to play, but they just don't know where to put him.
Exactly. It's actually a good problem to have if you think about it.
Exactly.
Right? So now, the last time we were in studio talking about this, you predicted based on the number of wins for the Mets that they weren't going to be a playoff team.
Yeah.
So Sean, what do they have to do? Let's let the Met fans know what they have to do for them to get into the postseason this year.
Okay, well, I was touched on before about the whole starting pitching aspect, which is true, but I'm going to just, dive that into the offensive side. The starting pitching is probably going to keep you into some ball games. If Syndergaard and Wheeler and Steven Matz all have pretty much quality starts every 5th to 6th day that they get out there. But can your offense put up runs? Can your offense keep you in the ball game? So that's kind of where the big aspect is. I think the starting pitching is, okay, give up 3-4 runs here and there, no big deal. But can your offense also kind of match that? Because if you get to the bullpen, Familia and Diaz are probably going to close out your ball game.
That's unbelievable. Well, that's Sean Potor, former BUTV play-by-play commentator, and more importantly, becoming a resident sports insider here on The Pulse with Peter B. So happy to have you every week. This was fun. Next week, we'll be discussing the New York Yankees, so you want to tune in for that. Folks, when we come back, we have Mr. Josh Sotomayor-Einstein in studio for our Politics with Peter B segment. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Pulse with Peter B, and this is our Politics with Peter B segment, joined by our political analyst, like he is every week, Mr. Josh Sotomayor-Einstein. Josh, how's it going, my man?
It's good. Nice to be here, as always.
A handshake today, folks, and he is better dressed than me today, so I'm a little jealous, but you look good. You look good, buddy. You really do. So, Josh, not too far away from our new studio here, along Hoboken's waterfront, there's been a controversy going on now for almost 7 years. And just so the audience knows, a 1997 development between Shipyard Associates and the city of Hoboken, including building 3 tennis courts and a tennis pavilion on the North Pier here in Hoboken, in addition to building 3 residential buildings. After completing most of the project, in 2011, the developer, Iron State, proposed constructing 2 high-rises on the pier instead of building 3 tennis courts, which, of course, is known as the Monarch Towers. And now, of course, the city, the Fund for a Better Waterfront, and the residents of the Hudson T building are all opposing this. They're all opposing this because, number one, it's going to block the views of the residents in the Hudson T building, and number two, the city is saying that the developer went against what they said they were going to do with creating buildings instead of tennis courts. So the controversial project has been in court for years, and the most recent appeal that the city has lost centered around the city's land use laws, preventing the construction of the projects. But the court said that their laws don't supersede what was already passed. So it's really starting to look like these towers are being built, correct?
So just to clarify on the last case, what the court actually said was that land use laws and zoning regulations can't apply retroactively to something that was already in motion. And then there's the second issue, which chronologically actually happened first, that the planning board was supposed to have a public meeting on the issue, and during the administration of former Mayor Don Zimmer, and they dropped the ball, and there was never a hearing, and that's why, or part of the reasons why, the city has lost time after time after time in court after court in the state of New Jersey in the Monarch case.
So what do you think? Do you think now the towers will be built? Because that was actually going to be my follow-up question, was the planning board meeting was never scheduled, and it was never had. So the judge, really, the city, by dropping the ball, had to force the judge's hand to rule in favor of these 2 buildings on the pier. I mean, do you believe that the city is really out of options right now?
So I think the city is trying to play a bad hand as effectively as it can. Question is how effective is that, and is the juice worth the squeeze at this point? Me personally, I'm undecided whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze, if it's worth all the effort considering how many weak cards the city has. And this isn't unique to the Monarch case. With the Union Dry Dock, the city also has a weak hand, and it's a question of how much of this are different political leaders just trying to appeal to their base of voters and the people that support them, and how much of this is a waste of taxpayer money, which are all very legitimate questions that a lot of people bring up. Juxtapose that is the desire and the concern of people to ensure that our waterfront stays the beautiful, mostly public space that it is, that many cities don't have because of Hoboken zoning laws and master plans that prohibit, building residential buildings out on piers.
Right. I mean, and it's just so amazing because I've taken many walks walking my dog up to the pier where they want to build the Monarch project, the Monarch buildings, and I just can't believe that they're actually going to build two 12-story buildings on there. I mean, it's almost like, I don't want to say disgusting, but it almost looks like the pier is going to fall in the water. Imagine putting two buildings there. Obviously, during construction, they'll put pillars that reach all the way to the base of the ocean and all that, or the river, I should say.
Whether it's their desire to build two towers or their original negotiation idea where they would build some sort of public space, it was always going to involve a rehab and a rebuild of the pier itself. And just in terms of functionality, what is possible in terms of construction, many other towns do have residential buildings on piers.
Just go up to Weehawken, right up the river.
Yeah, in Jersey City as well.
Exactly.
But the one spurious notion that people against the Monarch development do claim is that, and you said it yourself, is that, it's going to block people's views. And that's annoying, but what building doesn't block someone's view of something? It's a ridiculous NIMBY not in my backyard argument. There are many good arguments against the Monarch development. That is not one of them. It's not a good argument against any development. We should just lay it to bed.
And the current second ward councilwoman who lives in the Hudson T building and whose view is going to get blocked loves to use that. And that, to me, that's not really looking out after all of your constituents. That's more self-serving. But anyway, so deals have been struck with developers before, and especially with the reform, quote unquote, reform administrations before. I mean, if you look at Larry Bijou's properties in the back of town that's being built, I think it's like Madison or Monroe Street, I think it's Monroe Street actually, and the larger unit on Park and Garden, there were givebacks to the city. The Park and Garden one was, he was going to put the Elysian Charter School there. The one in the back of town is more open space, but these things are monstrosities. I mean, they are absolute monstrosities. So Mayor Zimmer tried to come up with a type of deal with Shipyard Associates, and the council voted against it. Now it looks like Hoboken is going to appeal again. I mean, this is just more taxpayer money, as you touched upon, being released, obviously, or being used to fund these appeals. When is enough enough?
Well, I don't know what, going back to something you said earlier in the question, I don't really understand or know what makes a building a monstrosity or not. It seems to be in the eye of the beholder. And it's an issue.
It was a monstrosity to me. It's certainly bigger than the building surrounding it. So.
Yes, and that's okay, because a bigger building might have more units, which might slow down the increase in terms of the rental market or even the buying market, so to speak, for condos and whatnot. But I think the whole conversation is illustrative of the fact that there's a double standard. There's one set of rules for the large developer, and they can get around the normal cantankerous system of the zoning board and the planning board and the city council and everyone that has to approve if they do these quote-unquote givebacks, which do have a community benefit. I'm not denying that. But then there's a separate set of rules for the small developer or the individual owner who owns one or two properties, or maybe even lives in the property that he owns or she owns and wants to develop. And I've heard from mid-sized developers and people that live in their unit, live in the building that they own, about the problem and the adversarial atmosphere that they have in the city's different boards. And it's impossible for them to get something done without it costing an arm and a leg. And then the large developers, well, they make special deals. They meet in smoke-filled private rooms, so to speak.
Exactly. Well, we're out of time, Josh. That's Josh Sotomayor-Einstein. He is our political analyst every week here on The Pulse with Peter B., talking about the Monarch Towers today, and it was such an interesting conversation. Thank you for coming in. Folks, join us next week as we give you the pulse on everything you need to know. Have a great week, everybody.